nice and cozy at 45 degrees with our chai. Thank you, Indira. And just decided we could have a chance to chat about some of the ways that Meredith has seen God at work. You've been here, what, 7 years?
Eight
8 years. So Meredith in her youth is the second longest employee here at the Open Door. And you've had lots of roles.
Oh, too many to count. I started as a shift worker in the women's shelter right after I graduated from college. So I was working part-time. I was doing second shift on Friday nights and Saturday nights, and then first shift on Monday mornings.
What would make you choose to do that out of college?
Well, one job is better than no job.
Yes, but you didn't have no job as far as I remember.
Well, it's not that I had no job. I was born and raised in Midland, and then I went to school in Grand Rapids. And after I graduated, I decided to come back home, moved back in with my parents for a little bit. And I was just looking for a job where I could use my degree, which is in journalism, for something worthwhile. I didn't want to just write press releases for anybody or do anything for anyone, but I really wanted to make a difference. And especially if it was making a difference in building the kingdom of God, like that was the primary goal. And so one of the job openings that I saw was for shelter work, which I'd never really thought about, but I saw that it was for here, for the Open Door.
Were you familiar with the Open Door growing up?
No, I was familiar with Caregiving Network, which isn't far from here.
Right.
But
And a good partner.
yeah, and a good partner, but I had never really made it all the way over here. I don't think I even remember. I remember Buttle Street more than I remember Open Door. But this was the only opening that there was, and so I applied. And Renee, who was the executive director before, looked at me during my interview, and she said, this kind of isn't the spot for you. You can do a lot more. And I said, but I feel like this is the place I'm supposed to be. And so that's kind of where I started out. And I ended up moving to full-time and being in the women's shelter for almost a full year before she moved me over here to the admin side, where I started doing more press release work, more office work, and here we are.
What do you know?
What? What do I do?
No.
So technically, I'm the marketing and partnerships coordinator, which means that I do a lot of different things, right? Like today, we're doing a lot of stuff with the website and with social media, and I oversee all of that. Anything in print or design, it's there because I either made it or because I approved it. And that's more on the marketing side, press releases, all those things, the emails that go out. And for partnerships, that's what we call really our development and donor processing side of what we do here, right? So with that, I do a lot of work with our upcoming event, Down on the Door, our annual fundraiser, writing grants with you, looking for funding in different places, and donor processing. So anytime a gift comes in through the mail or it's dropped off at the office here, whether it's like a physical gift in kind, if it's not food, or if it's like check or cash, I'm the one who's processing that or overseeing someone who's processing that and making sure all that money, all those gifts are accounted for and that we can use them to the best of our abilities.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think that grants is a good thing to bring up because all of our money that comes through the Open Door that allows us to function comes from individuals, grants, or foundations. And so we've got some great partners here in town. We're very thankful for the grants that we've even been awarded this year. Huntington Bank. Where else have we gotten grants from? We had a grant from Blessed Sacrament earlier this year.
Yep. DuPont,
yes. And then even DuPont with the computers recently.
Yes.
And just the partnerships that we have in town. We're very thankful for Nick Israel, who is helping us from Dow. And the reason you are seeing us at all, hearing us at all, is because Nick has volunteered his expertise and all of his toys to do this.
And special shout out to Heath.
Right, the lights, the fact that you can see us, and we're not sitting in the dark. is because Heath Hetherington from the Center for the Arts has provided microphones and lights and stuff for us so that we could do this. We're thankful that people have felt that this was a worthwhile effort. We had dinner tonight because Pizza Sam's generously donated a pizza for us and the crew, and just the many people that have stopped by with coffee or chai or whatever to look after us while we're sitting out here in the dark. It takes a village to even do this, and we're thankful for the people that really think of us and care for us in that way. So tell me some stories. Tell me about some of the people you know that have come through the open door and have really affected your heart.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. We joke about this all the time, but because I've been here for so long, we said earlier, right? We usually serve somewhere between 225 and 275 homeless people a year. Now, it's not new people every single year, but if you do the math, I think it's about 200 people every year that we house. I've been here for 8 years. That means there's at least 1,500 homeless people in Midland that I know personally, and I see them everywhere. I can't go to Kroger. I can't go to Walmart. I can't go thrifting without seeing somebody that I know. I can't go through a drive-through without seeing somebody whose life has been touched by the open door. So,
and many times they know you. They recognize you. If they don't remember your name, they know your face.
They do. And it's incredible. And it makes you feel so connected within this community. You know, I've lived here basically all my life. But I don't think I've ever found quite the same community that I have right here. And I think for me, really the stories and the people that I connect with the most were the people who were here when I first started, you know, or people who I've known for years, and I just see the way that they've grown and that God has worked in their lives. Like, and sometimes, right, that means things are getting better. Sometimes it means that they're not, right? I was talking to another lady in the shelter yesterday who talked about bumpy adversity.
Okay.
And this idea that, you know, when life goes wrong, it's just a bumpy adversity. Some of us have more bumpy adversities than others. But one of the things that we were talking about, even leading up to today, was a woman who has now passed away, but was at the women's shelter when I first started working here. And she was an older gal who had lived quite a long life before she came into shelter when I met her. And the more that you talk to her, she came across very grumpy at first. But she had a very wicked, dry sense of humor. And she was just funny. She loved to crochet, not knit. She loved to crochet. She was a big fan of Frozen. That was when that movie first came out. But the more that you talked to her, the more you learned about her story and the reason why some of her walls have been built so high. She'd been born in a larger family with, she and her siblings were really close. She actually ended up being the caregiver for her like adult disabled brother for many years before he passed away. She did get married and have kids of her own, but her husband was abusive and she ended up having to leave that relationship. And even later in life, her children, who in a lot of places where we would expect in a community, a child would care for their aging parent. These children didn't do that. When they would let her live with them, they would take advantage of her.
Yeah.
They would
essentially elder abuse.
Well, yeah, I mean they would take parts of her Social Security check. They would take her food benefits, to the point that, you know, even the feeling of being able to see her grandchildren, right? It wasn't a relationship anymore. It was a transaction. And so over the years we've gotten to know her, and she'd been in shelter several times. She ended up getting some permanent housing with a senior living development here in Midland, but she passed away a couple years ago. And when she passed away, you know, we were the ones who were left with dealing with her remains. She left them to somebody who was associated with the open door. And it's not that she didn't have family, and it's not that she didn't have all the things that you would expect a thoughtful, well-adjusted person to have. But this was still her home.
Sure.
Even when she moved out, this was still where she found her community and found those things. And, the longer that you walk with somebody, the longer that you talk with them, the more that you can see, even if there are moments when someone can be a little unpleasant, right? A little ornery, a little angry. The more that you build that bridge of compassion, the more you can understand why that person is that way.
Sure.
And you can have these kinds of conversations where you say, do you see what's happening?
Right.
Do you see the way you talk to people? How can we change that? How can we change for the better?
Right. And I think that it becomes less accusatory and more, I love you and I want to see things work out well for you. And sometimes the behavior that you're exhibiting is causing problems for you and not helping you.
Yeah.
And, I know we had a woman in the last year or so who also passed away. And she had an interesting story because when she came to the open door, she and God were not on good terms.
Yeah. Yeah. She was another one who came when I first started who, again, an older woman, a cancer survivor, but she had been adopted by a minister and his family when she was just a baby. But after her parents passed away, and she still had her surviving adopted sisters, but they lived out of state. When her world bottomed out, it was just, she didn't have anywhere to turn, right? She ended up losing her apartment and she moved back in with us. And it was interesting trying to talk to her about Jesus because she's someone who knew the Bible and she knew it well, and she knew how to tell you that she knew it well. She was very feisty. She was someone who always wore she had like outlandish outfits. She'd wear sparkly shoes. She always had to have her hair done. But she would tell you what was what. That was for sure. She hated cheese. Didn't want cheese on any of her food. She was just funny. She was a firecracker. But when she moved out, she actually ended up moving out because somebody from one of the local churches, another older single woman, was looking for a roommate, right? She had this big house and she wanted to basically sublet it. And so she moved in with this roommate who was a strong believer and kept talking to her about Jesus. And our hairdresser, who she went to see every single week, kept talking to her about Jesus. And so by the time that she did pass away, she had finally been able to make amends, not because, of the open door and the way that the open door talked to her, but because through the open door, she kept and found new connections to people who kept telling her the gospel.
Right. And kept assuring her that, again, she was well loved.
Yeah. And then it wasn't too late.
Right.
You can be 77 years old.
There you go.
And Jesus is still waiting for you.
And the interesting thing about that was you went to her funeral. You took a guest who was with us at that point in time to her funeral. And then there were people at her funeral that you knew from when you were working at the shelter and who had been in shelter then, but were not in shelter recently.
Yeah. Well, and there was a family who was in shelter with her at the same time, and they basically adopted her as their grandmother.
That's awesome.
And it, again, for someone who she never had children of her own, just another really beautiful example of the way that we find community, right? It's not linear, but it certainly can happen all at once, if you're meeting the right people. Yeah.
I think some of those friendships can even happen from volunteers. Like I think about Miss Vicky, who I never knew. She passed away during COVID before I was here, but people are still remembering her and like sending gifts to the open door in her memory. But she did so much while she was here.
She did so much. I mean, she did so much for guests. She did so much for me personally. I don't even know if I can think about it right now without crying. Like, she was such an exemplary, godly woman who did everything, right? Because of her love for Jesus. And that touched my life. That touched the lives of guests who came in, of other volunteers who worked with her. I mean, what a testimony to an amazing woman who, she built the office here. just as a volunteer. She'd worked in the legal department at Dow for many years. But back when she started volunteering here, this house that we're staring at right now, that's our admin building, it wasn't an office building yet. It was still transitional housing. So everybody worked out of that tiny front office in the men's
bedroom at one point in time.
Oh, I don't even know, but they would call it the dance because they would just, there was one desk and one computer and they would just like dance around. And
To see who was sitting at it.
That's crazy. That's crazy. It feels like constantly I'm thinking we don't have enough space. We don't have enough space. And yet we surely have way more space than they did when they started doing that. God is so good in what he gives us.
And I think we've been flexible over the years. Meredith's office is now in the basement, which I think Renee's office was in the basement at one point in time. And then Bob's office was in the basement. And, being flexible to use what we have, where we have it, and like you and I were saying, there's a spot in the basement that smells a little musty. We did have a flood earlier this year.
True. That's true.
We're still finding spots that were not undamped.
Well, and this, I know that we've been joking about this week of this feeling of like, well, what's next? What's next? What's next? Something bigger. I mean, the reality keeps coming back over and over and over again. We work out of 3 old houses that are constantly falling apart, right? We have a leak in the office building here, in the closet where we keep all of our paper supplies that we check every winter and every spring.
We have little plastic buckets up there
that we pour out so we can save our poor paper.
And, even that's funny because Matt Smith, our president, he says, yes, every time I drive by the open door, I look at that roof and I go, how long is that going to last? And, it's hard because they're old buildings and they're falling apart. And how much are we going to do to keep them?
Yeah.
But at the same time, we still have to keep functioning. We do have to keep the roof from caving in. We do have to keep the basement from flooding and that sort of thing because it's being faithful with what we've already been given. And unfortunately, that costs money.
Yep.
And, and we're trying to be very frugal and not be foolish with the donations we've been given because, again, they come from real people. Yeah. And, in that way, we are very thankful for our faithful monthly givers who sacrifice. Maybe it's the cost of a couple coffees, or maybe it's a lunch out, or maybe it's a dinner out with their family per month, and they sacrifice that to care for people and to do things like keep a literal roof over the head of people who have no place else to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And, that's one of those things, a question that we get asked all the time, whether you're giving a presentation or a tour, or you're just meeting someone across town who knows that you're connected with the open door, and they have that moment of compassion. They say, how can I help? What is the most helpful thing I can do? And the most helpful thing you can do is maybe the most boring answer.
Yes, exactly.
Which doesn't market very well, but it is so true. It is giving a monthly gift.
Yeah.
It does not matter how much it is.
Right.
If it is that $5 coffee, if it's $50, if it's, $16.72, we'll take that too.
Right.
But to have this baseline, how encouraging it is. A lot of people have their monthly donation set to come out either on like the 1st of the month or the 15th. Mm-hmm. You can see it.
Right.
In our databases, in our bank accounts. When those days hit, it is a blessing.
Oh, for sure.
And then when you see the list of names every single month up, faithful, it's incredible. It's humbling.
It is. And it reminds me that those people are really the backbone of what we do. They're the faithful people who quietly keep doing what cares for the people that we care for.
Yeah.